well loved in all the Bible. Everything that is recorded in the Word of God about him and his life is true. There are many valuable lessons we can learn from him. Since Joseph's story occupies several chapters of Genesis, this lesson will be broken up into several parts. So I'm not going to read out of Genesis 29. We're familiar with this, but I'll read the paragraph. Joseph, Jacob's 11th son, was born into a complicated, unhappy household. Jacob had married sisters, Leah and Rachel, and during their 7-year childbearing rivalry, they each had given their maids Bilhah and Zilpah to Jacob to produce more sons. Each mother and her children probably had their own tent. Joseph had 10 older half-brothers and 1 younger half-sister. They were all close in age. As a son of his father's favorite wife, Joseph doubtless grew up with special privileges. So can you name Joseph's half-siblings? The first one is Reuben. Who else? Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, and Zebulun. Number 2, how would you describe the character of Joseph's mother, Rachel? Jealous, insecure, what were you going to say? Selfish. Sad, yep, sad, kind of grasping, always looking to outdo somebody else. So Rachel evidently was a beautiful woman, but not a very personable woman. And do you think that this was a peaceful household? No, not at all. Very complicated, a lot of rivalry among the sons, half-brothers, and a lot of animosity we'll see developing and so on. Number 4, when Joseph was 6, his family moved away from his grandfather Laban's land, Genesis 31, journeying toward Canaan. On the way, Jacob heard that his twin Esau was coming to meet them with 400 men. Since Jacob had fled a murderously angry Esau 20 years earlier out of fear for his life, he divided his people and livestock into 2 camps in case Esau attacked one. How did Jacob present his family to Esau after sending presents ahead of him? He put the maids and their children in front, and Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. So if you can read into what he's doing, it would seem that those he's trying to protect the most are the ones in the back of the group, because he's thinking Esau is a potential threat. And so he, essentially he's treating his sons and other wives as a buffer zone, which seems really, really awkward, to say the least. So Jacob does not have a real great testimony of being a solid family man. Number 5, about 8 years later, Jacob and his family were camped by the city of Shechem. Joseph was 14 when his little half-sister Dinah, who was probably about 13, went into the city and was assaulted by its prince. What did Joseph's older half-brothers, Simeon, about age 19, and Levi, about age 18, do? They spoke with deceit, and each took his sword, came upon the city unawares, killed every male, and looted the city. So, yikes. Violence and deceit and animosity, and you have to wonder what sort of a father was Jacob that his sons came up with this plan. Now, they're 18 and 19 years old, so they're of age, and they're doing this, but nonetheless, Jacob has evidently set a tone in his household where this is okay, or at least it happened. Number 6, not long after that, God told Jacob to go to Bethel. After a divine message and living there for some time, the household journeyed on. Joseph is now 15 years old. What happened near Bethlehem? His mother Rachel began to give birth, and she suffered severe labor. And number 7, what did she name the baby? Ben-Oni, which means son of my sorrow. But Jacob intervened and called him rather Benjamin, which means son of my right hand. So what happened to Rachel, number 8? She died. So she died in childbirth, or as a result of childbirth. And so this caused great sorrow for Jacob. Number 9, and I'm going to read out of Genesis 37. So I don't think I'll read the whole chapter, but I will read a portion of Genesis chapter 37. Now, Jacob lived in the land where his father had sojourned, in the land of Canaan. These are the records of the generations of Jacob. Joseph, when 17 years of age, was pasturing the flock with his brothers while he was still a youth, along with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a vari-colored tunic. His brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, and so they hated him and could not speak to him on friendly terms. Then Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Please listen to this dream which I have had. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf rose up and also stood erect, and behold, your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to my sheaf." Then his brothers said to him, "Are you actually going to reign over us? Or are you really going to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Now he had still another dream, and related it to his brothers, and said, "Lo, I have had still another dream, and behold, the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." He related it to his father and to his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream that you have had? Shall I and your mother and your brothers actually come to bow ourselves down before you to the ground?" His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind. Then his brothers went to pasture their father's flock in Shechem. Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers pasturing the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send you to them." And he said to them, "I will go." Then he said to him, "Go now and see about the welfare of your brothers and the welfare of the flock, and bring word back to me." So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. A man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field. And the man asked him, "What are you looking for?" He said, "I am looking for my brothers. Please tell me where they are pasturing the flock." Then the man said, "They have moved from here, for I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. When they saw him from a distance, and before he came close to them, they plotted against him to put him to death. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer. Now then, come and let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits, and we will say, 'A wild beast devoured him.' Then let us see what will become of his dreams." But Reuben heard this and rescued him out of their hands and said, "Let us not take his life." Reuben further said to them, "Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit that is in the wilderness, but do not lay hands on him, that he might rescue him out of their hands to restore him to his father." So it came about when Joseph reached his brothers that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the vari-colored tunic that was on him, and they took him and threw him into the pit. Now the pit was empty without any water in it. And we'll pause there. So back to our question sheet, number 9. How old is Joseph now? 17, it says. And number 10, what job had he been given? To pasture the flock. So he's acting as shepherd. Number 11, with whom? The sons of Bilhah and Zilpah. So this would be Dan, age 20, Naphtali, age 19, Gad and Asher, 18 or 19. By the way, it is likely that these young men were already married. Number 12, what did Joseph bring to his father? A bad report about them. 13, what sort of relationship did Joseph have with his father? Israel, that's Jacob, loved him more than all his sons because he was the son of his old age. If you compare numbers throughout Genesis, you can figure out that Jacob was 90 or 91 when Joseph was born. He is now 108. 14, what principle does God expect parents to use in dealing with their children? Out of Deuteronomy 21, favoritism is not allowed. You're not allowed to have favoritism toward one child over another. And number 15, what did Jacob make for Joseph? A vari-colored tunic. Now, we all know about the many-colored tunic. However, the wording in Hebrew could possibly be better translated as a long tunic, that is length of the hem, or a long sleeve tunic. So that's possibly a better understanding of the word than many colored. And that would not be just a really nice gift. In the culture of the day, if you're a normal hired hand, if you're a shepherd or a farmer, you would have a short tunic. It would be to your knees. And you might have shorter sleeves. Why? Why a shorter tunic and shorter sleeves? Because you work. You work in the field, you work with animals, and to have a long thing that's dragging through the grass or through the barnyard, it's not convenient. But if you have a long tunic on, it's kind of like when you're driving down the highway and you see a highway crew. How can you tell who's in charge? The guy with the clipboard, right? Everybody else has a shovel. So the people with the shovel, they're the ones that are digging. The guy with the clipboard, he's the super. What did Jacob do for Joseph? Turned him into a supervisor. So how do Joseph's brothers respond to this? Hey, we're so happy for you. You got promoted. Not quite like that. They don't like it at all. They hated him previously. They hate him more intensely now. So this is not a good scene. So number 16, how did Joseph's brothers respond to the situation? They hated him and could not speak to him on friendly terms. In other words, they couldn't even have a normal conversation. They couldn't talk about the weather. They couldn't talk about the sheep. They couldn't talk about the politics in Bethlehem. They couldn't talk about anything because his brothers were just so angry, so hateful towards him. Anytime they tried to have a normal conversation, it would devolve into them just snarling at him. This is a family. This is wow. How out of whack is this? So number 17, now this is a bit of a judgment call. Why do you think Joseph told his brothers about his dreams? It's kind of subjective because the Bible doesn't give us a clear statement of intent. I think there's two possibilities. What do you come up with?
Bragging.
So one is pride. He's kind of bragging. Hey, you won't believe the dream I had last night. You guys all bow down to me. It could be bragging. The other is possibly he's really, really naive. He can't see the looks on his brothers' faces. He can't decipher. The audience is not real friendly to your overtures. Possibly. I don't know. I can't tell. And does anybody have any insight into that question? What was the motivation for Joseph sharing his dreams? I don't know. If you come up with something, let me know. So, number 18, how did his family respond? His brothers hated him even more and were jealous of him. His father rebuked him. So his father said, Joseph, really? That's not appropriate to say things like, your mother and I are going to bow down to you. That's not a very good thing to say. But it also says that Jacob, in verse 11, his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind. So Jacob he just kind of filed it away and said, that's interesting. So, number 19, true or false, I can control what others say or do to me. False. So you have no control over that. None of us do. We don't have any control over that kind of thing of any kind. Number 20, true or false, regardless of what others think, say, or do, I am responsible for my words and actions. That's a true statement. Yeah. So regardless of what anybody else says or does to me, I am still accountable to God for how I respond. And so, the brothers, maybe they think that Joseph is way too big for his britches, but they are still accountable for their attitude, their words and actions towards him. And Joseph surely cannot control his brothers. He can't control whether they like him or hate him or are jealous, but he can control how he responds to that situation. And that is true for us too. Number 21, Joseph's father sent him to check on his brothers after they went to pasture the flock near the city of Shechem. Did he find them? No. A man found him wandering in the fields. That's a curious way of describing it. Again, I wonder if he's a little naive or something. I'm not sure why the wording is like that. Number 22, after following directions, Joseph found his brothers. What did they do before he arrived? They plotted against him to put him to death. So they said to each other, I am so sick of this kid and so sick of his dreams and the way that Dad treats him like nobility. I am so sick of this. Let's do it. Let's kill him. And by all indications, they're going to. They intend to carry out murder against their half-brother. So number 24, who protected Joseph's life? Reuben, the oldest. So Reuben is the firstborn, and he evidently sees some responsibility to protect the kid. And when the father's not there, the firstborn is kind of in charge. And so he says, no, let's not shed blood. Let's not do this. And he said, the way that he goes about it is, let's put him in this pit. It's probably a dry cistern, a well, a water catchment system of some kind. And he apparently is trying to appease his brothers by saying, don't kill him now. Let's just put him in this pit. But he has a different intent, and his intent is to come back later and get him out and say, run home and don't come back, because your brothers can't stand the sight of you. So that's apparently what Reuben is trying to do. Number 23, what did they say, the brothers? Here comes this dreamer, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits, and we will say, a wild beast devoured him. Then let us see what will become of his. So the Bible does show us that sin can run in patterns. What kind of a guy was Jacob in his earlier life? What kind of a guy was he towards, say, Esau and towards his father Isaac and so on? Was he a pretty square guy, pretty straight shooter? What did he do? He's a liar. He tricked his brother Esau into selling his birthright, and then he lied and tricked his father into giving him, essentially taking over the role of the firstborn. And so Jacob is a deceptive, tricking liar. And now his sons are plotting to do what? Lie to him. And they will. They're going to lie to him. And even though they know that Joseph is very, very precious to him, and Jacob is going to be heartbroken, they will allow him to continue to think for years that a wild animal ate Joseph. Wow. How heartless and how twisted is that? Number 24, Reuben protected him. Number 25, what did Joseph's brothers do on his arrival? They stripped him of his tunic, threw him into an empty pit, and sat down to. So I find that maybe most disturbing of all, even. They just threw their kid brother in a pit, and someone says, man, am I hungry. You guys hungry? Hey, I got some bologna. Let's have lunch. Wow. Heartless, cold. Can't imagine what the conversation was like. Did they eat near the pit? Did they at least get out of earshot? Horrible. Absolutely horrible. So they eat a meal. Number 26, what did they see but ignore? The distress of Joseph's soul when he pled with them. So I mean, this is even more heart-wrenching. It wasn't like he sat down in the bottom of the cistern and just sat there. He was calling, please don't do this to me. Don't hurt me. Don't do this. And they just seal up their hearts. And they say, nah, the dreamer deserves it. Number 27, to which two ethnicities did they sell him? A passing Ishmaelite and Midianite caravan of traders. So, you know, these two groups of people were camel riders and caravan merchants. So they traveled to Saudi Arabia, to the Negev, and to Egypt. They had trade routes, and they would bring spices and all kinds of commodities and luxuries. And so here, and they would sell slaves too. And so the brothers see this caravan. Number 28, what did they do to Joseph? Out of Psalm 105, they put shackles on his feet and a collar of iron on his neck. So he is well and truly a slave now. And they have put chains on him, and he's probably having to walk all the way down to Egypt. Number 29, where did they bring Joseph? Well, Egypt. 30, who bought him? Potiphar, the officer of Pharaoh's bodyguard. There are similarities between Genesis chapter 37 and the book of Esther. God is not mentioned once in either one, yet he is present behind the scenes as the unseen protector and divine orchestrator. Was God still with Joseph? Yes. And last question, did God have a plan for this terrible event? Yes. So to us, if we read Genesis 37 and stopped, we would say, what a horrible story. This is a tragedy. But you got to read all the way to the end of Genesis to find out God had actually orchestrated this entire scene. Now, that doesn't take away the guilt, the culpability of the brothers. What they did was horrible. It doesn't take that away, but God was planning to get Joseph down to Egypt, and Joseph was eventually going to become the prime minister of Egypt. And he is going to arrange for the safekeeping and really the thriving of his whole family, of Jacob and 70 members of his family, to come down to Egypt and to be rescued from famine. And really, Egypt is going to function like an incubator. That family of 70 over the next 400 years is going to turn into several million Jews who will leave Egypt and go to the Promised Land. And God is moving the pieces on the chessboard, and Joseph is a key player. So, you know, if we just read Genesis 37 and say, oh, this is tragic. The kid didn't deserve any of that. And his brothers are so cruel. That is true, but God has big plans, and God is still in charge. So, questions or comments?
Joseph is such a great, clear picture of the gospel. He has three sets of two dreams that he interprets. And the first one, his brothers kill him. The second one, he's buried. And the third one, he receives power and authority to save the brothers who try to kill him.
Good point. Yep. There are hints and clues of the gospel throughout the Old Testament. Another comment somewhere? Question? No. Take your prayer bulletins, please.